And welcome to MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week show, talking all about baseball. We have some great news for you this week. Adam LaRoche retires over his son. Baseball takes over San Antonio, and the Goose saga gets deeper. All on this edition. And hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of MLB This Week. It's the weekly podcast talking all about baseball and the fun things that happen and sometimes not so fun things that happen. And Gary, this week you had the first story up about one of those not so fun things.
Well, Rich, Adam LaRoche went to the White Sox last year and had just a god-awful year. And he came out to this week and said he's retiring from baseball, walking away from a reported $13 million. And at first, we didn't know why exactly when the news first broke, but by now everybody knows. It's because the team officials had asked him to stop bringing his 14-year-old son into the clubhouse every day. Now, I have to say that this story has gotten a lot of legs. It's dragged on all week. There's been all kinds of things, even to the point where the White Sox threatened to boycott a game because it's a meaningless game in spring training. I doubt if they would do it during the regular season. Yelling at the general manager, fights galore all over the place. And this has turned into an ugly, ugly situation. And quite frankly, I've reached a point where I'm sick and tired of it. Kids aren't allowed to come into your workplace every day. They're certainly not allowed to come into my workplace every day. And Adam LaRoche just brings his kid in every day. And I got to say, the first question that came to my mind is, when does this kid go to school? If he does at all. And apparently he's homeschooled, but there's been even some controversy about that. But it's really opened up a big can of worms. There's a lot of trouble in Chicago. Kenny Williams, the executive vice president, former general manager, is not well liked apparently by it seems by anybody in that team. And this is just it's just opened up a big can of worms, as I said. And it's great that he wants to have his family and his son around him all the time. That's terrific, but there's never any mention about his daughter. He has a daughter as well, and his wife, and it's just the son's there all the time. And I don't know where you stand on it, but the stories coming out now have been so vaguely different. He says they told him they didn't want the kid at all there. Kenny Williams says he never said that they just wanted him to dial it back because he was there every day and even on the road. And apparently it was for several years. And he's gotten a lot of support from his fellow players, which is a little odd in a way, because in order for the White Sox to have said something now, there had to be a complaint by either a coach or a player or whatever. But it just seems weird to me, this whole situation. And then the White Sox aren't out of the, they get part of the finger of blame on this, because this is something that they really should have handled in the offseason and probably would have cut off a lot of this news that they're getting from it had they done that way and just put out a general memo saying that family and such and such will only be allowed, X amount of times, and they must be out of the clubhouse. And I don't know. It's a tough situation to talk about, because if you're against it, then you're almost like you feel like you're anti-family. But on the other hand, look, as I said, we're not allowed to bring people into the workplace. and I don't get why he's been doing it, but he walked away from $13 million, and I don't know if it's stupid or selfish or both, but that's the biggest story of the week so far, Rich.
Yeah, and I've been staying away from this story. Just heard about it briefly. Um, Not exposed to the story too much, I guess, is more the situation with me. But I have been reading different articles about it. The players' union monitoring the LaRoche situation, and Chicago, the chairman of the White Sox, actually declaring that the LaRoche saga, if you want to call it that, is over. Um, and yeah, I got to agree with you. A few days would have been good for LaRoche to bring his son in, show him a little bit about what goes on in the clubhouse. Obviously, over the years, he's probably already done that. LaRoche, in the twilight of his career, he's 36 years old. And as you said, he had a terrible season last year. He could have earned the $13 million and just accepted the situation and had his son stay home. That would have probably been the prudent thing to do for him, but made the decision that he was done. So, yeah, I'd say close the book on this. The Players Association, I don't think they should even get involved at this point. It was a personal decision. There's no battle here, and I don't think the White Sox are crying that LaRoche is leaving. Um, Que sera, sera, and as you said, a little bit too much around the clubhouse. It is a professional atmosphere. Um, if every major league player brought all the kids in, there would be a romper room going on in the clubhouse. But yeah, I used to go to my dad's work when I was younger, once in a blue moon, once a year maybe, if that, and that was plenty for me. Of course, it wasn't a major league baseball team, but yeah, you would get in the way sooner or later, and I think it was right for the team to put a cap on it and say, a couple days fine, but not every day.
I agree. I don't see any problem with what they did. I just think it was the way they did it. And apparently he's claiming that he had a deal with them, but there was nothing in the contract. It was a verbal agreement, and that's why the Players Association can't really get involved because but if it meant that much to you and you're willing to make a verbal agreement, why didn't you hold out for a written agreement? That way, at least if they decided to change it, you have the you have the union can get involved then because it's a violation of the contract. But the way it's all gone down with this, and really, I think the kids should be in school during the school year, and I mean going on the road, the home games. Now Prince Fielder brings his kids a lot to the ballpark as well, but see, Texas has a different set of rules. Kids are allowed in, but they got to be out 90 minutes before the game, and blah blah blah. There's all kinds of different things, and that's fine. And I think that's where the White Sox went wrong again. They should have come up with something. If this was a problem, now maybe it became a problem in spring training. I don't know. But if this was building up all this year, they should have did it in the off season by sending a letter or something to all the players saying that these are the new rules and regulations we want to implement, and let it go with that. But it to me, it's a non-story now.
Yeah, and a lot of the times at that age, these players are actually working, quote unquote. They're in a job. They could actually get in trouble for having a kid appear like he's working. He's underage, at least in the state where I live. That's a big no-no. You can get fined if he's walking around in a uniform, if he's working. They have labor laws against that. So that's another issue that probably nobody's even brought up. But, it's still a concern. So best of luck to Adam LaRoche, his son. Maybe he'll follow in dad's footsteps. And best of luck to the family as well. So Adam LaRoche takes his 15 minutes of fame during spring training here, 2016. and que sera, sera.
And Rich, maybe he'll go down to San Antonio then because there's something going on down there, and that's the first story that you have for us.
Yes, I do. In San Antonio, the big news this weekend, it's already wrapped up, but I figured it was worth a nice mention here. For the fourth year in a row, Major League Baseball has appeared in San Antonio. They played at the San Antonio Dome on March 18th and 19th. It wrapped up yesterday. And this year, it was the Texas Rangers and the Kansas City Royals squaring off down there in the Alamo Dome. And they had Hall of Famers Nolan Ryan and Mr. Ken Brett from the KC Royals holding court there down in San Antonio, doing interviews and giving some autographs to the fans. In 2015, more than 46,000 fans attended. And this year, over the 2-day exhibition schedule with the Rangers and the Royals, they expected even more fans than that. So a lot of great times down there in San Antonio. And I misspoke there. It wasn't Ken Brett, it was George Brett, his Hall of Fame brother, appearing there with Nolan Ryan as a part of what they called Kings of the Diamond. They had a special dinner down there in San Antonio, including those two players, with interviews and meeting the fans and things like that. So great time there. And I didn't even realize what a great city San Antonio actually is. They have a lot of entertainment down there. I know, Gary, a lot of the talk has been to have the MLB look up at Montreal again for an expansion team, but I wouldn't discount San Antonio with now the fourth year of a lot of fans gathering to see baseball.
Well, I think if they expanded, Rich, they'd have to go by two, and it could be Montreal and San Antonio. So I'm sure they're on the map, and I'm sure this is why they're doing such things like this to track it and see, what kind of crowds they draw there and all. And it could be, they have the Spurs there, and they do very well down there. It could be just one of those cities on the rise.
Yeah, and getting back to Brett and Ryan's dinner, they were the guests of honor, of course, packing the Hyatt Regency San Antonio Riverwalk Hotel, and they did a presentation of about an hour's worth of baseball stories, the old-timer type stories that everybody loves to hear that never get old. So a great time there in San Antonio. They bill it as the Big League Weekend, and this was the fourth season that they're doing it, and it's becoming an annual event down there, probably a precursor to them getting a baseball team. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that would be pretty neat. And, there's already the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers. So another one down there. It's big enough state to hold it, apparently. And they have a liking for baseball. So not a problem.
It'll be interesting to see if they were admitted into baseball. Would they be the American League or the National League team, would you think?
I would think it would probably be American, only because the other two Texas teams are in the American League. And Montreal, if it was Montreal to come in, was traditionally a National League team. Even the team that the city that they moved to in Washington, National League team. So I think they would try to keep it that way and really set up a rivalry. They'll have almost like a Texas division in the American League, but I guess more realignment would have to take place then, and we can figure that for another day.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that would probably make the most sense. Have the Expos come back in as a National League team. They're in the Northeast, within reach of some major teams like the Mets, the Phillies, Pittsburgh to a certain extent. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Major League Baseball tries to expand in the next year or two. And you have our next story up here, a guy expanding all the time. His ego is anyway. He got cleared recently.
Well, of course, you're talking about Dodgers outfielder Yasiel Puig, and he was cleared in an investigation of as part of MLB's domestic violence policy will not be suspended for his role in an offseason bar fight, according to a statement from MLB. This is the statement. The Office of the Commissioner of Baseball has concluded its investigation into an alleged incident involving Los Angeles Dodgers outfielder Yasiel Puig and his sister in a Miami area nightclub on November 26, 2015, the statement read. The investigation included interviews of witnesses, including Puig and his sister, as well as a review of video footage from inside the nightclub at the time of the alleged incident. The Office of the Commissioner's investigation did not uncover any witness who supported the assault allegation. Both Puig and his sister denied that an assault occurred, and the available video evidence did not support the allegation. Thus, barring the receipt of any new information or evidence, no discipline will be imposed on Puig in connection with the alleged incident. So I guess it's safe to say he dodges another bullet, Yasiel Puig. He certainly has a way of finding his way into trouble, and for the most part, he seems to worm his way out. So another dead issue, Rich. It's hot news for a day or two, and then it dies. But eventually, all of these things go away, and we get to play ball.
Yeah, they have no smoking gun in that case, and that's what I think a lot of these cases are now boiling down to, whether or not there's video or photographic evidence. In other words, they're not going to take the word of witnesses and eyewitnesses, which up until now or up until a year or two ago had been pretty relied upon by investigators. But now it seems like they want everything on video. They want the crime. They want everything that happens captured. But yeah, Yasiel Puig, obviously my advice to him would be stay out of bars. Why would you bother?
You know what? I've often said that when you hear all of these football players fights in bars and things like that, and all of these athletes, and they say the same thing, and the answer you always get back is, well, what are we supposed to do? We want to live our life too. We don't want to live in a bubble, and yeah, I understand that, but maybe you just got to be a bit more selective and watch what you drink, believe, whether you like it or not, you are maybe not a role model, but you're somewhat of a celebrity, and people like to get on celebrities' nerves. And there's always that one drunk guy or something that's going to want to either pick a fight or wants to be your friend. And then if you blow him off, then he's going to get annoyed. It happens all the time. So I'm with you. Just stay away from this kind of thing and have parties at your house.
And the MLB did release a statement in addition to the non-video evidence, did say that they did not uncover any witness who supported the assault allegation. Both Puig and his sister denied that the assault occurred. So, they're covering their bases. They do have this policy in effect, but I'm not so sure that the policy is going to be all that ironclad most of the time.
It certainly appears that way, and it's just a shame that something like this has got to happen, and we still have we're still waiting to hear about the Jose Reyes case. They did rule on the Chapman case. He got suspended for 30 games, which is interesting because he did not get arrested either. But I guess he admitted to shooting off a bunch of the guns in his garage and having a fight with his wife or his girlfriend or both, whatever. And it's just a shame that these things have happening and going on at this particular time, but that's the way of everything in the world right now. The whole world's going nuts, it seems. and I guess baseball is no different.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know in the Philadelphia area, there was a incident back in February with ex-Philly Eagle LaShawn McCoy involved in a bar fight, and they actually have video evidence of the events that took place there, where a couple of police officers apparently were kicked, punched, stomped, and taken to the hospital, according to details from the police report. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this. It's one of those things where video evidence hasn't been uncovered before to this extent, and McCoy and others are involved in this. So, short of there being a huge private settlement on this, it's going to be interesting to see if McCoy gets charged.
Yeah, without a doubt. And if they have that smoking gun video,
Yeah,
it's hard to argue with.
Well, another guy that's kind of hard to argue with is our next story up here on the podcast. And if you're looking at the video version, you're going to be seeing a picture of the famous Goose Gossage, longtime Yankee. Now he's a coach, works in spring training, guest instructor with the Yankees. His saga continues. Of course, he went out and called out certain players for acting up, so to speak, I guess is the best word, on the field. A little on-field, what would you say, celebration, perhaps?
I guess, yeah, Goose is not too happy about guys expressing themselves.
He continued with his comments this week after kind of retreating and backing up a little bit. But he also singled out, like, what is baseball going to become? Like a bunch of Cam Newtons, quote unquote, was said in the past week here in baseball. And he's just trying to make a point. I don't think he's singling out specific players on purpose. He's just bringing up different names that have been involved in different games, obviously, and not maybe promoted their game as good as they could have. Of course, he ripped the bat flippers in the past couple weeks. And one interesting aspect of all that, one of the guys he talked about was Cespedes from the Mets. And somebody asked Cespedes this week about, what did he feel about the Goose Gossage comments? And he didn't even know who Goose Gossage is.
Well, he did say he must be a pitcher, so he knew that much. Complaining about the bat flipping. I don't, Goose, just let it drop. I mean, he's making silly sounding in a way. I mean, it just sounds like anytime some of these older guys complain about things, it just sounds like sour grapes to me. There was an incident a couple of weeks ago with Oscar Robertson complaining about the NBA players of today, and the game's changed, and they do evolve and they do change, and you got to go with it and hope that they don't screw it up too badly.
Yeah, and he was asked a couple days ago something along the comments of, everyone starts out with good intentions. If you can't beat them, then you might as well join them, in reference to the bat flipping and the carries on field. He said, never, quote, I was taught a way to act, and it hasn't changed in 100 years. And all of a sudden, in the last 15, you can do anything you want to. So there's just an old-time ball player. He's not going to change his opinions. And baseball coexists with the new bat flippers. So for now, it's going to be an uneasy sort of situation where they collide together sometimes. But yeah, I think, as you said, Goose should fade back into the background, probably where he was before all this commentary. He's let himself be known, and let the players police the game.
And he played with one of the most, for him to say for the last 15 years, didn't he watch when his teammate Reggie Jackson played? I mean, Reggie Jackson used to stand and watch him all the time. He didn't do the flip, but he'd do the stare, he'd do the toss away. I mean, this isn't anything that new. The only difference is they're not throwing at the guys like they used to. But, don't forget, a lot of things have changed in that area. The umpires are watching it more. We have warnings now. We have all this concussion evidence coming out. So things change, Goose. And I don't like it all. Like, everybody knows I hate the designated hitter, but I'm not going to stop watching the game. So
That's for sure. Well, we'll see how that saga plays out. Who's going to step up next in the world of commentary? We heard from Bryce Harper already. We've heard from another couple of ball players, but now, as you said, the season's going to start up soon, Gary, just about 12, 13 days from now. So we're getting real close. And down in spring training, a lot of the big stars are just starting up. Zach Greinke, got his first start and his first win the other day. And as did Madison Bumgarner, got his first start. He got lit up a little bit. But, all of a sudden here, as the weather's heating up down there in Arizona and Florida, the big guns are being brought out for their warm-ups as well.
And, Rich, when you watch a game now, you're not seeing as many. You're still seeing some guys that aren't going to make the team, but you're not seeing all those number 90s as much anymore as they begin to cut the rosters. I believe the Mets have made 2 roster cuts. I don't know about other teams, but they've made 2 so far. So you're starting to see some of the easing out of and easing into the lineups to more of the regular players. So we're getting close now, and now is the time to start turning it on a little bit. Next week probably is when this week, the next week, last 10 days, season starts. You really want to see. You start paying more attention to see how the pitches are looking, and now they're still continuing to get their work in, and they'll continue to get their work in. But you start to look to see if their pitches are more crisper and whether they're throwing more breaking balls and that kind of thing as they go along, as we get closer.
Yes, indeed. Down in the Cactus League so far, big surprise, the Arizona Diamondbacks leading the pack out there with a 789 winning percentage. It's pretty obscene, even though that Zach Greinke just got his first start with the Diamondbacks out there. Dodgers in second place overall with the best record. And then the Texas Rangers. Looking at the Grapefruit League, Washington Nationals have been turning it on of late. They're 12-3 with an 800 winning percentage down there in the Grapefruit League, followed by Toronto. And a big surprise for me, the Philadelphia Phillies posting a nice 12-5 record so far.
Well, Rich, we know it doesn't mean a thing once the season starts. So, but that's good. It's good to see the Phillies making a comeback, and rebounding, and the Nationals. They're good at winning in spring training. It's when the regular season comes up that they tend to struggle. Plus, they've got some new players and a new manager, so. I'm not totally surprised, but once the bell rings and they go for real, and then we'll see what happens. But man, how are the Cubbies doing, Rich? Maybe they're pulling too many pranks, or at least Chris Bryant is.
Yeah, it seems like the Cubs are not really doing all that great in spring training, but as you said, Chris Bryant had a funny prank that he pulled on the Mesa Community College team down there in Arizona. He was introduced as a European player that had transferred to Mesa. And, of course, if you're not familiar with the Mesa Community College baseball team, they finished in the top 3 for the past several years. won many championships down there. But the coach was in on this gag. He was explaining to his team that he had to bring in this European guy that they had just found. He's coming in off of a transfer from Europe. And of course, when it was Chris Bryant that was brought out onto the field, some people started to recognize him on the team a little bit after he started swinging the bat. There's an interesting video available, which I'll try to put on our website at MLBThisWeek.com, but you can also find it on ChicagoTribune.com, the paper there in Chicago, the whole story for that matter. And yeah, Bryant was taking some mean cuts out of the batter's cage, parking them over the fence, and the players' reactions were just amazing as they were looking at this guy. And they panned over to the dugout as somebody was recording it, and one of the guys had mentioned that looks like Chris Bryant. It's got to be Chris Bryant. And all of a sudden, the cat was left out of the bag. So a little fun there, Chris Bryant having with some of the college kids there in Mesa, Arizona.
Well, that's what spring training is about. Enjoy it, have fun, and get ready. Get your work in. Get ready for the long, long season because it is a haul. And have your fun now.
Indeed. And Bryant seems to be a serial type of prankster, as he also went undercover recently as a Lyft driver, that service that competes with the Uber. There was a video made of it. That is also available at the Chicago Tribune site, and it's also on YouTube. So if you're watching our video here, MLB This Week, on our YouTube channel, you can also find that video where it's recorded Chris Bryant having a conversation with his passenger about baseball, and all of a sudden he reveals to him that, yeah, my real name is Chris Bryant, and he's there driving him around in this vehicle.
Like I said, you get ever since it's good to be young again, right, Rich?
Yeah. So, you know, what else would you do if you weren't a multimillionaire ball player?
There you go. I don't know. I would have loved to have the opportunity, but never happened. But good for him.
Yep. And you have a couple of stories coming up here about one of our favorite subjects, ballpark food. And this one happens to be down in Cleveland this year.
Well, Rich, we said last week this was going to be a food episode, and we're not going to lie. We're not going to disappoint you. Cleveland Indians have unveiled a new lineup of food at Progressive Field this season. The Indians will have a dozen local food options at the plant, at the park, including a very special item from Ohio favorite Fatheads Brewery. Said item is called the Headwich because of the brewery's name, of course, but also because it's a sandwich that might be the size of your head. If you get hungry before the season starts, you can get them at one of Fathead's locations in the Cleveland areas. So go check that out. The South Side Slopes, which will be served at the ballpark, has kielbasa and pierogies on it. You can also try the Fat Italian, which includes ham, salami, capicola, pepperoni, and crumbled hot sausage, and provolone cheese, and rosemary mayo, plus a hard-boiled egg. So are you getting hungry yet, Rich?
Yeah, it hit a good spot in my repertoire of ballpark food for sure.
Along with a selection of beers from the Brew Kettle and Great Lakes Brewing Company, and several pizzas, including spaghetti and meatball from Dante's Inferno. So Cleveland is going to have a virtual potpourri of food choices this year, and may have to see about making a trip out there. But if you want me to continue along these lines, I can continue with the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, why not? Let's bring in some more food talk. I can almost smell that food cooking out there at the ballpark.
Well, the Braves do concession offerings at Turner Field are going to be different. They've unveiled 3 items and exhilarating rewards. And if you're lucky enough to get to a Brave game, you've got to try some of these dishes. The first one is called the new Tater Tot Chop, which, as the team's press release describes, starts with a layer of tater tots pressed in a waffle iron, loaded with bacon, melted cheese, and jalapenos, topped with a second tater tot waffle, and served with Coca-Cola infused ketchup. That is the tater tot chop. The next item that they introduced, and it's going to be a foot-long hot dog layered with fries, chili, nacho chips, beer cheese, and jalapenos, topped with popcorn, then drizzled with a Coca-Cola infused barbecue sauce. That is known as the TED, or AKA the Everything Dog. And it's perfect for you if you like that kind of meal. And finally, there is the Punisher. It's a country fried smoked rib meat slathered in a Monster Energy drink infused barbecue sauce, topped with fresh cut beer battered onion and slauza, tucked in between a toasted and buttered Hawaiian bun, and pinned in place with 2 slices of bacon. Now that sounds good.
That sounds dangerous. I think we better go back to Cleveland and fast. Tater tot press. I think I'll skip that. The other two, possibly.
And Rich, there's one more, and this is more for the health food people out there. We've been talking all about this delicious food, but to be honest, there isn't a lot of nutrition in any of that we were just talking about. So the Stockton Ports are doing something about that. The A's Class A affiliate knows that ballpark food can't just be a study of cheese in all its forms. And this year they're bringing veggies back, starting with asparagus. That's right, Rich. They are having an asparagus night.
Wow.
May 21st in Stockton, California. The Stockton Ports are having an asparagus night. And as you know, with minor league baseball, if there's a night, there's got to be a uniform that goes with it, because the minor leagues are big on that. So there it is, a green uniform with the asparagus all over it, and that's it. May 21st. If you're out in Stockton, California, go check out the asparagus night at the Stockton Ports game.
And hopefully they won't hear this in the stands. Just the crickets there looking for the drop off of the asparagus leaves, because I don't think we'll be there with that one, Gary. We're
that night. I'm busy that night. I might be at the Braves field having the tater tot chop.
Yeah, I think that's more along our lines. But yeah, for the veggie lover, little asparagus will do every now and again. So that's a great lineup. Sure to be one of many this season that we talk about with ballpark foods. And there's never a shortage of interesting type combinations. I'm curious about that Coca-Cola infused barbecue sauce.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. They have that, and the infused ketchup, and the Monster Energy drink infused barbecue sauce as well. So I guess they're getting ready for the new stadium.
Yeah, the yuppies coming down to Atlanta trying to get some of that wild new food. Well, close to Atlanta, a few hundred miles away anyway. There's a big powwow going down right as we speak here on Sunday, March 20th, out of Cuba. The President of the United States is down there talking to people, trying to infuse some goodwill towards Cuba from America and this newly found glass nose of love towards them. But in baseball, most recently in the last 30 years or so, the transfer of players has been pretty great. And on our podcast here on the video version, you're looking at a picture of a player who kind of started it all. And this appeared in the New York Times in the last couple of days. This gentleman's name is Rene Archoa. He actually started some of the defections from the National League and Cuban team, the national team. He defected from Cuba in 1991 to come over to the St. Louis Cardinals. He actually landed with them in 1993, made it on the mound for them. He's sort of grown older over the years, of course, but he still has fond memories of it all, being known as the guy who started the current wave of players that have defected and come to the U.S. to play and stay here. So now more of the talk is they're trying to normalize the relations to the point where these players won't have to up and leave Cuba. They'll be allowed to join major league ball clubs. And yes, sometime in the future, Gary, you might see a big influx of Cuban players legally now that it seems like everything is mended. The fences have been mended there or trying to be mended with the U.S. So a little story there of the guy who started it all back in 91.
Great story there, Rich. And the MLB is always looking for a new source of, I guess you'd say, call it a source of players. So, this has been a somewhat slightly tapped resource, but a lot of good players there, and we'll see where this goes and whether or not we can get to the point that it's more of a friendly a place to visit, and they don't have to go through what they've gone through, some of the players.
Yeah, and then this gentleman shed, he lives in Miami, by the way. They uncovered some VHS tapes of his games with the Cardinals. So it was like a walk back in time for this gentleman who obviously has been retired for a good amount of time now, but fond memories of when he came over here from Cuba and made a new life here in the U.S. And really, when we see the pictures, and as we've said in the last couple of shows here about the Cuban-American relations, it's no mystery why some of these players would want to have left Cuba and never wanted to return, really.
Unless you like 1950 cars and
yeah, and you're stuck back in that era, that's for sure. So a lesson, another one of our lessons as we diverge from baseball into politics, let the free market reign. You'll move much further into the future faster. So
there you go.
We'll have to see how baseball reintegrates itself with Cuba and how Cuba wants to take that relationship to baseball. Always plenty of money to be made wherever baseball goes. There's talk of games there next year, possibly, although that might be a little fast. But, who knows? Maybe Cuba will be like a Puerto Rico, and the U.S. will take it in its arms, embrace it, and we'll have another place to go on vacation without a passport down there.
At least it's warm, right? And
Yes,
Rich, we're 2 weeks away from the baseball season, and I guess we're gonna make some picks. You've been working on your picks at all, and I haven't started yet, but 2 weeks we got to really look at them.
Yeah, we have our pick show coming up probably within the next 9 days, right before the start of the season. We'll be off next Sunday. We tape the shows generally on Sunday for Easter. But yeah, we're working on those picks as we speak. And it's going to be interesting to see what teams we both come up with this year.
More and more interesting every day.
Yes, indeed. So make it a point on your calendar. If you listen to the show, tune into our MLB pick show, our baseball picks that we think are going all the way. Go over to MLBthisweek.com. You can find our website. Follow us on Twitter at MLBThisWeek as well. And all kinds of great things there. You can even communicate with the show. And we have a little speak pipe app there where you can leave us a voice mail. Let us know what's on your mind. We'll even put it on the show. How about that?
There you go. That's great. And don't forget to listen to tons of baseball podcasts at baseballtalkradio.com. Go check it out. It's got all kinds of podcasts covering baseball. It's got Rich's Phillies Talk podcast and my Mets Musings podcast. And we have podcasts there from the Pirates, the Orioles, the Cardinals, the Japanese baseball, fantasy baseball, even on how they take care of the turf. There's a podcast about that. So go check it out, baseballpodcast.net and baseballtalkradio.com. That's the home of great baseball talk shows.
Yep, and you can even listen to our show now streaming out of a college station up in Connecticut, Gary. We forgot to tell our listeners about that. Don't know how many we have up there, but we're now streaming on an actual station up there, an online station.
Yep, certainly are. So lots of ways to get the show, so go check it out.
Yeah, well, the old clock on the wall has been ticking away, and that brings our show to a timely end this week. We'll talk to you again for our big pick show right after Easter. Enjoy your holiday, everyone, and take care. We'll talk to you again.